Breaking right now, Lady Colin Campbell has raised concerns over the treatment of Prince Archie in a bombshell post on X. She writes, going off what Professor Bolthrop, one of the leading paediatricians in the country, told me in 1995 about the link between children's responsive to direction from authority figures and child abuse, I have to say I found little Archie's pathetic response to Meghan on her Instagram posting deeply chilling. And Lady C joins me now to discuss this further. So, Lady C, you're basing this off the post that Meghan put on her Instagram feed earlier this week with Archie in the garden. What did you see?
I was absolutely horrified, Dan. I was totally horrified. In 1995, Professor Bolthrop told me, he said, I was seeing him because actually somebody had reported me to social services for being a cruel and negligent mother. And I was caught up in a huge case in the family courts for several months in 1995, before, of course, I was absolved of whatever, all accusations. But I had to take my children to Professor Bolthrop, who was the leading expert in the field at that time, at the Chelsea and Westminster Hospital it was, and he was going to be investigating. And of course, you know my boys, so you know they're
I
very
do.
spirited and always were.
Lovely voice.
And I couldn't, I was trying to get them to behave themselves as they were caterwauling all about the place, enjoying themselves. And he saw that I was, and he said, Lady Colin, I wouldn't worry if I were you, or words to this effect. He said, because your children are too badly behaved to have been abused. Then he said to me, and he put it slightly differently.
All right, folks, this is bad. Meghan Markle's innocent-looking Instagram clip of Archie in the garden has taken a dark turn. Lady Colin Campbell has just come forward, saying Archie's behavior in the video is deeply chilling. According to Lady C, Archie looks afraid of upsetting Meghan. Instead of acting like a normal, carefree child, he's overly eager to please, cautious and hesitant. That's not the behavior of a kid who feels safe and free. It's the behavior of a child who's walking on eggshells. She says it plain and simple. Archie's reaction is not normal. And honestly, she might be onto something.
But then he explained to me the children who are being abused by their parents are very docile, over eager to please, he said, I would have concerns about your children if they were sitting down quietly or being too responsive to what you ask them to do. And that's what, when I saw that clip, and she has been stupid enough and brazen enough and unaware enough to post it without understanding that what she's telling us is that child is basically terrified of her. He's overeager. He's so careful of not antagonizing her. I mean, no child who, of what Professor Bolthrop told me, who is not being abused, would have, only if you want me to. I mean, excuse me. I mean, the child would grab the hose, or will you just hand the child the hose? It's so obvious that she has that child in a vice-like grip, and it's, if they were a husband and wife team, there are laws now about coercive control. There are no laws about coercive control with children. But that, to me, is the absolute embodiment of coercive control. I was beyond horrified. I thought this child is in serious trouble and is going to remain in serious trouble. And she doesn't understand that broadcasting to the world that her child would actually come up with only if you want me to, is actually a sign of abusiveness. I can't think of any other interpretation or explanation. And I say this as the mother of two children who, and any parent who has a child who is not under such rigid control would have to be horrified at it. I mean, well, you've got a niece. I mean, how wouldn't you be horrified if your niece said something like that to you?
Well, and I think what's been so interesting for me, Lady C, is seeing the Archie PR campaign over the Invictus Games, desperately trying to prove that Meghan is good with children, and yet every video or picture they release proves quite the opposite. So we had this latest release where Meghan is using these children now as props, and even putting out a video of her and Harry with these children. Now, let's be honest, Harry is a natural with children, right? He's good with kids. He always has been, and I give him credit where credit is due. But Meghan is so uncomfortable around children. And Lady C, I know you have many sources on this, as do I. I was the first to report that Meghan had gone through numerous nannies in just 6 weeks, and she's not hands-on at all with her children.
And here's where things get even more disturbing, because this isn't just Lady C's opinion. She's basing this off a conversation she had with one of the UK's leading pediatric specialists. This expert told her that children in strict or controlling environments don't act out. Instead, they become overly obedient, hesitant, and constantly seek approval.
Thank God. Thank God. I mean, can you imagine having a hands-on mother like that, who has made it so clear to her 5-year-old that if he doesn't do exactly as she wants, when she wants, and how she wants, I mean, I can't exaggerate enough. And also, you know, my mother was also a dominatrix, and my mother was also very controlling. And I remember when I was about 4 or 5 years old, maybe 6, we were at the luncheon table, Mummy, my brother, my younger sister, and I, and the butler came in and was serving us and whatever. And I said something, and she just gave me a look. And Phoebe, my younger sister, then ratified it. And she said, having given me a look, and I knew I was to shut up and did, she gave Phoebe a look, and Phoebe didn't. And she said, "Child, which bit of don't contradict me, don't you understand?" And my mother was a monster. There are no two ways about it. I even wrote a book on what a monster she was, called Daughter of Narcissus. And so there are bells ringing loud and clear, but I'm not going off my personal experience. I'm going off what Professor Balthrop told me about Archie's response. And then Meghan, well, I think her brother Tom said that she shouldn't be left around children or animals. I think he wrote that before the marriage, didn't he?
Indeed. And all of those warnings were ignored. And more fool the people who ignored them, most notably Prince Harry, of course. But what we see from Prince Harry this week, Lady C, is this embarrassing attempt to try and convince the world everything's fine, nothing to see here, I'm still completely happy. And he's given this interview to Us Weekly. Now, number one, how degrading. I mean, this is a guy in the line of succession who's now pimping himself out like a D-list celebrity to trashy weekly magazines that very few people even read anymore. There's the headline. Prince Harry shares special memory with Meghan Markle from Prince Archie pregnancy. And when you dive into the story, it says, Prince Harry is looking back on a sweet memory with Meghan Markle when she was pregnant with their first child, Archie. Every Invictus Games creates incredible experiences and holds special memories for everyone involved, the Duke of Sussex exclusively told Us Weekly during the semi-final volleyball game between Team UK and Team Nigeria at the Invictus Games. My wife has been part of this community since shortly after the Orlando Games in 2016 and has loved every minute of it. For this year's Games, Meghan was by Harry's side for a few events in Vancouver before she returned home. While Meghan couldn't be present for the entirety of the game, she showed her support for her husband via her newly launched social media page. Harry told us the Instagram shout-out was very sweet and much appreciated. Your take on this PR spin of all PR spin?
Well, first of all, Dan, I can't remember, but I'm sure you know the name of the guy who now heads US Weekly, or Us Weekly rather.
Sound familiar? That's exactly what we saw in Meghan's video. Now, Meghan and Harry are always talking about protecting Archie from the world. But what if the real question is, who is protecting Archie from them? And then we have Lady C's biggest bombshell. She says Meghan's control over Archie could be considered coercive. And let's be real. If this were a husband controlling his wife, we'd call it abuse. She makes an excellent point. The law protects adults from being manipulated and emotionally controlled by their partners. But when it comes to kids, there's nothing stopping a parent from doing the exact same thing. The reality is, over-controlling parents don't raise confident, happy kids. They raise children who grow up anxious, fearful, and desperate for approval. And honestly, that's exactly what Archie looks like in this video.
Yeah, he used to be the editor of People, and effectively he's moved on over to Us Weekly and turned that magazine now into a propaganda tool for Harry and Meghan. Dan Waitford.
Yeah, so he's one of Meghan and Harry's assassins or gunmen or hitmen or however you want to put it, or certainly propagandists, and it was bad enough when it was People, but now that it's Us Weekly, I mean, it's so déclassé. And I think you're being very generous in saying that they are now D-list. I think they're sort of hovering beyond F.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. People even on the D-list don't do interviews with Us Weekly anymore, do they?
No.
Good point.
Also, they're proving they have a few things to prove and to clean up, First of all, their marriage is happy. Secondly, Meghan was pregnant with Archie. Let's not forget, she was pregnant with Archie. Archie, who he's proven himself to be the most wonderfully intelligent and wonderfully forward-thinking child. His first word was crocodile, and he was a great prenatal diver who managed to dive between Meghan's knees at Birkenhead. So maybe Tom Daley had something to do with that pregnancy. But so there are all sorts of, they're trying to put out fires in all sorts of directions, but it's almost as if the fires are raging in the real world and they're putting out fires in somebody's backyard that's 600 miles away, because nobody gives a toss what Us Weekly has to say. So I think that would be my reading of it. But also, let's remember that guy. I can never remember his name.
Dan Wakeford, yeah.
He needs content,
yes.
And they're providing him with content. But also, you have to ask yourself, what a move downwards for him. Did he get an increased salary, or was his day finished and he was moved downwards? And it's a natural regression as opposed to progression.
Now look, I'm not saying Meghan is intentionally doing this. But here's the thing. Parenting isn't just about good intentions. It's about how your child is actually responding to you. And if Lady C's concerns are valid, this could be a major red flag. And let's not forget, social media has been buzzing about this too. People are noticing Archie's hesitation, his body language, and his tone of voice. This isn't just a one-time thing. This could be a pattern. So now the question is, will this be the moment people start asking tougher questions? Because if Meghan thought this video was a good idea, she might have just exposed something she wasn't ready for. So here's the real question. Did Meghan just accidentally expose a major problem? Because let's be real, this was supposed to be a sweet mother-son moment. But instead, it's raising serious concerns. We already know Meghan is extremely controlling over her public image. But now, people are wondering if that same control is affecting her children too. And trust me, the backlash is real. People are saying Archie looks way too careful and hesitant for a child his age. And if this video was supposed to make Meghan look like a great mom, it might have just done the opposite. Alright folks, if you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe for more no BS commentary, and let's get the conversation going. Do you think Lady C's concerns are valid? Or is this all being blown out of proportion? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.